In this video, I'm going to share with you the 5 domains of life exercise that has allowed me to gain massive clarity, fulfillment, and have a decision-making matrix for any big decision in my life. So if you don't know who I am, my name's Yamuna, and I lived as a monk for about 3 years in monasteries all over the world, studying wisdom texts and serving my community. And now I run 2 companies. One is called Conscious Business Mastery, where we help holistic thought leaders scale their missions to $1 million plus through proven systems. And the second is called Marma Method, where we create world-class bodywork healers in every single home. So in this video, I'll break down the 5 pillars of life exercise and how you can use it to gain clarity on any tough decisions that you're facing in life, as well as how to reestablish fulfillment if you're experiencing dissatisfaction or disconnect. And I think it's going to be super helpful for you if you're doing any work with clients as well. This is something you can employ with any life coaching clients or holistic clients that you may have as well. The 5 pillars of life are as follows. 1 is health, which is your emotional, mental, and physical well-being. The second is relationships. The third is our purpose, which is our sense of contribution, what we're giving back to the world. The fourth is our spirit, so our ability to transcend and experience the divine. And number 5 is wealth, which is our ability to generate abundance and resources in our lives. So there's a few ways to use these 5 pillars. And the very first point I want to make is that to the extent that we're misaligned in these 5 pillars of life, we're going to experience dissatisfaction, which then causes us to lead a life that's run by compulsions, obsessions, addictions, and by our lower nature, instead of integrating all the different parts of us that make us whole. Now, obviously, not everybody is going to be exactly the same in how they value and prioritize these 5 parts of life, nor would that be true because we're all individuals and what makes us each fulfilled is going to be unique. So the very first thing I want you to do is side-by-side comparison of how you're actually using your time right now. So think about how you're spending your time, how much you're emotionally invested, and how much energy you're putting into each of those 5 pillars of life or 5 domains of life, and list 1 to 5 based on your priorities. So let's say you're spending the most amount of time on work, right? And that might be wealth generation. And then next is your relationships, and then next is health, and then next is spirit, and last is purpose, right? Just for an example. So list in your priorities how you're actually using your time in those 5 different areas of life. On the second list, what we want to do is, in our heart of hearts, understand how do we actually prioritize those 5 domains internally. So what does that mean? In my heart of hearts, what is number 1? What would I put before any of the other things in my life? Would I put health before everything else? And a way to figure this out is that obviously all 5 of these are important, but there is a hierarchy here in our hearts of how we value these 5 things. Would I do more of number 1 over more of number 2? Would I do more of number 2 over more of number 3? Would I do more of number 3 over more of number 4, and more of number 4 over more of number 5? In my heart of hearts, when I think about my ideal life. So we might say, okay, spirit is my number 1 thing. I want to, experience the divine. I want to have self-realization or experience self-realization. And that's number 1 in my heart of hearts. And I would do more of that activity over number 2, which may be purpose, right? My sense of contribution to the world. So get those 2 lists of 5 together. 1 is how you're actually using your time, and 1 is the hierarchy that you hold in your heart. Now, to the extent that those 2 lists are different, we're going to experience dissatisfaction, because dissatisfaction arises when we're living out of integrity with the divine or with our very human needs and values that we hold sacred, of which we've already covered those in those 5 domains. And so what we want to do is, first of all, attack the one with the biggest gap. So let's say on one list, spirit was number 1, but on the other list, how you're actually using your time is that spirit is number 4. Well, that has a huge difference between those 2. So by actually implementing more time for your spiritual life, you're going to fix the biggest gap that you have in your 2 lists and start to experience more fulfillment in a most immediate sense. And so that's one way to just begin to assess where disconnect is coming from. The second way to use this is to have it as a decision-making matrix. So what do I mean by that? For instance, There was a point in time in which my wife and I were living in upstate New York. It was very, very cold. We felt a little isolated and far from our spiritual communities. And there were different needs that were coming up for us as a family. And so we considered moving to Colorado, to Florida, or to Los Angeles. We didn't really know how to make this massive decision, right? Because I work online, so it's not really about if I can get a job here or there. And we could find a house anywhere, and there's awesome spiritual communities that we knew about in all three of those places. So how do we make a big decision like this? Well, what we did is we looked at those 5 values of life and broke down each of them to be a little bit more granular. So what's most important to us when it comes to our emotional, mental, physical well-being, what's most important to us in our relationships, what's most important to us in spirit, et cetera, et cetera. And then we looked at Los Angeles, Colorado, Florida, and saw how many of the boxes were ticked off for us, at least in theory, right? Because we're not going to know until we actually live there. But in theory, how many boxes does LA tick off out of the 5 values when we really break it down? Okay. How many boxes does Colorado and how many boxes does Florida tick off? And then basically we found the answer was very, very clear. And so I find many people have these big decisions to make, and they don't really have a good decision-making matrix to guide them, especially when maybe both options are really hard to choose or both options are really great. And it's like, man, this could be really great or this could be really great. How do I decide, especially when it's a very big decision? I find that these 5 values, using them as a decision-making matrix, has been so crucial for me because it just makes it black and white. Doesn't necessarily make it easier to pull the trigger on any decision, but it certainly makes the data a lot more clear for me to decide based off of. Now let's dive into a little bit of how to optimize each of these individual areas of life if you're still not clear on how to make it simple for yourself. Right? So when it comes to health, there's 3 main categories that is really going to help us experience vitality. The first is our sleep, the second is our daily routines or rhythms, and the third is our diet. Okay? And one thing I want to mention, when I was studying as a monk and learning Ayurveda, which is a holistic science from ancient India, it mentions that our diet is not just what we're putting in our mouth, but anything that we're consuming through the 5 senses. So what is coming in through my ears? What is my ears' diet? What are my eyes' diet? Maybe I'm scrolling mindlessly through reels. Maybe I'm hearing gossip and nonsense and news and tragedies all the time. Maybe and what's coming in through my nose? What's my nose's diet? What's my mouth's diet? What's my skin, my sense of touch diet? What sort of touch am I allowing into my life? And so a lot of people think, okay, if I just eat healthy sort of foods, then I have a good diet. But if we're consuming nonsense through our eyes, through our ears, and not having the right sense of touch, healing touch applied to us, then we don't really have a robust diet. Sleep. How can I optimize my sleep? These are very simple things that you can do. You can not eat 2 to 3 hours before bed because digestion is a very active process, and sleep is usually a detoxification process. And those two, of active digestion and passive detoxification, those two processes do not work well together while overlapping. And so what happens is if you eat close to bed, then you're going to still be digesting while you sleep, and that's going to leave a lot of undigested food in your body. And so even if you sleep a long period of time, you're going to wake up feeling sluggish because there's toxicity in your body. Okay? Another one is obviously exposure to light. And we're not going to be producing melatonin and any of the hormones that are going to allow us to get deep sleep if we're looking at bright screens. So at the very least, using blue blocker glasses that block out a lot of the harmful rays of light. Otherwise, just trying to stay off of our devices, around 8 p.m. or maybe 9 p.m. at the max. Okay? So there's simple ways to optimize sleep. And then lifestyle. How am I living in integrity with the time of day? With the time of week, with the time of year, and with the time of my life. The main reason people experience disease is because they're living out of harmony with the element of time. So what do I mean by that is every moment of the day, there's more beneficial and less beneficial activities to do. Meaning there's certain hours of the actual 24-hour clock that we have that are going to harness and bolster and support certain activities, and they're going to diminish other activities. And so when we understand, for instance, in that 6 to 10 a.m. slot in the morning and 6 to 10 p.m. slot in the evening, those are the best times to exercise, to move, etc. The times before that is the best for spiritual practice, 2 to 6 a.m., that really, really early morning time. That's a great time for spiritual practice before the sun is up, writing, creative energy, journaling, etc., etc. And then middle of the day is a great time to be working, that 10 to 2 or 10 to 2 slot. It's a really great time to be working and to be getting a lot of output and to eat our largest meal of the day. So these are a few ways we can start to optimize health. Now, in relationships, I thought that this principle was very important and not something I hear a lot of people talk about, but that there's 3 main domains of relationships that create a healthy relationship ecosystem. So the first is having mentors, gurus, teachers, elders, coaches above us that are more wise, that can see our faults, that can lovingly show us by example whenever we're off course or whenever we need to, step up in our lives. They're a living example that we can look to. It's also going to call us out on our BS in a loving way. And so people like that have tremendously more experience, wisdom, integration, we need those people to pour in. It's like a spring of water that's pouring into our ecosystem. Next category is that we need our peers. These are people that we can laugh in life with, we can cry in life with, we can relate to the struggles of. They're going through the same chapters of life as us, and we can kind of commiserate and celebrate and experience life in a collaborative way with our peers. Okay, so people in our same age group or chapters of life. And then the third is our juniors or students or mentees or people who are younger than us. These are people who look up to us in some way that either consciously or unconsciously, agreed upon or not agreed upon, they're looking to us for guidance or as an example, and they're observing us and they're seeing our character, they're seeing the way we make decisions, they're seeing the way we deal with conflict. And so being able to pour into people, whether that's your children, your students, your community members, people who are less studied than you in maybe some of the sciences or things that you're trained in, these are all ways that we can actually nourish that domain of relationships by having those 3 different ecosystems actually fulfilled. People pouring into us as gurus, mentors, teachers, people in the same sphere as us as peers to relate and go through life with, and then people who are juniors or students that we can pour into. And in this way, we have a very harmonious relationship ecosystem. Make sure to hit the subscribe button below. When you hit subscribe, when you hit like, when you comment, whether it's something you want to see more of, something you want to see less of, it really helps me grow this and grow this for you. I feel like I've been given so much. I've been able to grow so much from the grace of my mentors and so many beautiful teachers and life experiences. And I want to give back in this YouTube channel as much as possible. Now, when we think about purpose is like the fruits and flowers of our tree. When all the other parts of the tree are nourished, then naturally that purpose is going to come out as fragrant flowers, as fruits that are very juicy and very nutritious. And the thing is, when you are nourished in all those other components and pillars of life, those fruits are going to be abundant. And I don't think you've ever seen a fruit tree that just only grows fruit at the tippy top of the tree. No, you may have seen like apples in an orchard or pear trees or things like that are so heavy with fruit that all of their branches are bending down low. And naturally, when we're overflowing with fulfillment and giving our fruits, our gifts to the world, then those fruits are hanging low. We're not keeping them to ourselves on the tippy top of our tree and just hogging those gifts to ourselves and our family, but we're actually, our branches of our generosity are bending low for anybody around us to be benefited. That we know any room we walk into, we can contribute to, we can uplift if it's called for and if it's necessary. So that's our sense of purpose. What is my greatest contribution in this life? What do I have to give? And it can be so simple. You don't have to have an incredible business. You don't have to become a missionary, but you can have simple ways that you give back to your community, that you do things in service, and little obsessions that you get into a wormhole of that you can share joy with others using. Okay? So we've covered relationships, we've covered health and purpose. So Now there's spirit. What am I doing to transcend? What am I doing to self-actualize? There are many different traditions, and there's many ways that are there to transcend. And in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the tradition that in the books that I studied from, it says, as one approaches me, I reward them accordingly. So the main thing in our spiritual lives is to have a sincerity of seeking that naturally the universe, God, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, Ram, Madhusudan, Jesus, Buddha, is going to reveal to us our next steps and place teachers, place text, place things in our life that are going to nurture that little sproutling of our spiritual desire. That sincerity of our seeking is going to be met. And so that's the very first prerequisite in spiritual life, is to have a sincerity of longing, a sincerity of seeking that allows that little sprout of spiritual life to begin to sprout. And then naturally there's going to be water and nutrients that are going to be coming from different holy texts, from different meditation strategies or transcendent strategies, and different great embodied masters and embodied gurus that we can start to learn from. Obviously, we want to pick teachers that are actually integrated. And so, speaking about this topic in a non-sectarian way, that's how I'm thinking about it. What are the ways? What are the texts? What are the methods of transcendence I can do in my daily practices? Who are the teachers I can learn from? And what am I putting into my ears as my spiritual hearing diet? Because in any tradition, no matter what tradition you're studying, the main mode of transcendence is through the ears. Because one of my spiritual teachers, he says that we don't see through our eyes, we see through our ears. Because even though the eyes are seeing the gross matter around us, our conceptions are sprouted from our beliefs, okay? And any tradition is going to install different beliefs, which is going to allow us a different perception of the world around us. And hopefully, if it's a bona fide, genuine tradition, it's going to allow us to see reality more and more as it is. Get that glimpse, that little bit of a glimpse into more and more of reality as it actually is, beyond our illusions, and actually allow us to see others and see the universe and see everything connected in a beautiful way. So that's spirituality. And the last one we have is wealth generation. And so you don't have to be rich, but what I want to ask you is think about all those other domains of life, and think about all of those domains: your purpose, your health, your relationships, your spirituality, what an integrated, thriving existence looks like for you. And you may not want money for money's sake, but believe me, when you think about all those things sprouting and blossoming and thriving in an incredible way, those things have a very real dollar cost behind them that would support you. Okay, giving back to your community, giving back to your relationships, eating high quality foods, living in a high quality home, right? All of these things, having the time, having help in your life, having help with your family, maybe retiring a family member. So one of the beautiful quotes that I heard about wealth is that the only people who say money doesn't buy happiness are the ones who haven't given enough of it away. And so another quote I've heard is that money definitely doesn't buy happiness, but it can definitely buy down pain. There's so much pain and confusion and conflict that's caused in families and communities by the perception of having not enough resources. And so when we can change that perception, we can pursue gaining skill sets that allow us to generate more wealth in whatever respective field of life we're generating wealth in, then there's a natural overflow. There's a natural not thinking about money that can occur, that I've seen even spiritualists who are, pretty developed, but they're worried about money all the time, and they're thinking about money all the time. And so even though they might think money is bad, they're thinking about money all the time, versus someone who may be integrated with the domain of wealth. They're not thinking about money very much at all because it's there, it's present. They know how to generate it. They're not worried over it. And it's fueling and catalyzing everything else in their life. I believe that wealth is an amplifier. Money is not good or bad, but it simply amplifies whatever values that we hold sacred within our heart. So if there's good in your heart, money is going to amplify that good. if there's selfishness and egotism in your heart, money is going to amplify that. But money in itself is literally just a dead person, a dead guy on a piece of paper that has no actual value to it. But it allows us to amplify whatever is in our heart. And so it can't change your character in and of itself, but it can amplify your character, and it will show you more about what is there that was hidden as you work with it. So I believe money is a beautiful self-discovery tool. It's a beautiful self-integration tool, and it's certainly an incredible amplifier of generosity and good and of your mission in life. So we've covered quite a bit of ground in this video. I've spoken about how to use the 5 domains of life as a decision-making matrix for any important decision that you may have. I've talked about how to understand any disconnect or dissatisfaction and be able to recalibrate using 2 different lists. One is how you're actually using your time, money, and energy, investing in those 5 values. And the other is your hierarchy inside of your heart of hearts. How do I actually value these 5 things and what order? And then seeing the difference between those 2 lists to see the greatest area of improvement in those 5 domains to reconnect to yourself and to reconnect to joy. And I've explained a brief overview of how to optimize each of those 5 domains so you can experience a thriving existence. So I hope that this helps you, as it's really helped me in my life. I do a 5 domains exercise and review probably 2 to 3 times a year, and I just see where am I at in those 5 domains? What needs to be shifted? How do I need to realign? And also something to note is that your hierarchy in your heart, that list of 5, that's your heart of hearts, that may shift as you change as a person. So something that I learned is that my values have shifted from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago. And for me to hold myself to the standard of how I valued these 5 things in the past forever going forward while I'm a dynamic, growing, shifting person isn't fair to me, and it's also not true to what's going to make me truly fulfilled. So that also allowed me to be awake to how are my values actually shifting throughout time, and maybe every 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, they're going to change for me. And I need to be awake to that so that I can recalibrate and reorganize my life accordingly. So if you like this, leave a little comment below. I'm trying to grow this channel. If you liked it, subscribe. And I read all the comments, so I'd love to know what you thought of this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.